Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today's June 26, 2024. Want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Also want to thank Doug Harvey for introducing me to today's guest, Michael Waterman. Where in the heck you calling in from, Michael?
I'm calling from Ottawa in Canada.
How cool is that? Let me just ask you off the bat. Do you prefer me to call you Mike or Michael?
I really don't care. I go by Michael these days, but
Okay,
yeah, I'm happy
cool.
with either.
What's the best thing for a human being?
Um, Best thing for a human being is to, I don't know, pursue. Good question. Out of the blue. I think to follow their bliss. Really to be happy. That sounds cliche, but yeah, to try to
That's
be happy.
totally okay to follow your bliss and be happy. That's good. Okay, what's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
My favorite form is really through my senses. I mostly observe. It's my experiences, so it's my senses that really are the best way in which I receive the world.
Why do you think humans collect or gather information? I'm glad you laughed because we're supposed to have fun here.
Yeah, I collect a lot of shit.
I know.
Why do I do it? I think it's amusing it's amusing, and there's also some kind of unfounded idea that the more information we acquire, the better we will be, the more better understanding we will have of our
Yeah,
experience.
more is better. Yeah. But do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
A bit of both. I think people can decide to become obsessed about it. It's not so much of a. It can be an innate personal trait, but I think also it can be a decision. To pursue an obsessiveness, I guess. Because
Yeah.
that's how it manifests itself in my life.
Yeah. Do thoughts create emotions?
Thoughts create emotions. Oh, that's an interesting one. Um, so implicit in that question is whether you can actually control your emotions, right? You can actually decide to be happy or not. I think to some degree yes, some degree no. It's a hard one. I think you can actually to some degree affect your emotions by through thought.
Yeah, the subgenius say, pull the wool over your own eyes.
I love it.
But
Yes.
again, see, what I'm after, Michael, is like have fun, laugh. But also, it's me and you versus the wording on the questions.
Yes, of
And
course.
that's what I'm all about. And I love when you said, can you control your emotions? What a question. I should add that. Can you control? Well, most people say, well, yeah, I can control my emotions, but maybe they wouldn't because George Lakoff, neuroscientist, says we're operating 80% not subconsciously or unconsciously. It's like me
Yeah.
and you, it
Yeah.
feels like both of us are present and we're conscious right now.
Yes.
So how could they say we're 80% that way? But we know there's something deep, and that's what I'm after in
Yeah.
talk about. Because some of these questions are, is it more this or more that? It doesn't matter. You don't have to answer the question. It's really just a prompt to talk. So the next one is fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I.
Well, for me, until I've made something, I don't know what I don't. I can change the question a little bit. I don't really know what I'm making until I've made it. Uh,
Good. Yeah. Yeah. Because McLuhan said, I don't know what I think until I say it.
right.
Joan
Right.
Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and I'm a maker, so I start by making. And
Yeah.
then I have some kind of idea of what I've made when it's done.
Yeah. Can humans think without language?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that yes, I mean, yeah, this is a debate with my dad, who's a very wordy kind of person, but of course they can. Yes.
Yeah. Chomsky says a language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
I get all flustered if I'm in a conversation, and I try to recover, and I usually fail utterly, you know.
Yeah.
But generally, I don't rely on language on conversation, you know, in my personal life, you know.
Well, your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
It's depends on as humans in general. Um, I I think we're probably more instinctive than we are thinking.
Yeah.
Whether that's feeling or not, whether that maybe that's manifested as feeling. Yes.
You know, that's funny because see, a lot of people say, I think we're more feeling 80%. And
I
then,
think, yeah,
instinctive, because I'm, having studied the McLuhan, the great Canadian McLuhan,
yeah,
he he teased people
of
to
course,
believe his percepts were concepts. So he's in academia and they want him to say concepts.
yeah,
So he would say percepts
mhm,
and they would think, yeah, that's bullshit. So that's why he's chalked off as a charlatan. But he was going for the word you were. What's instinctive? What's impulsive? What's feeling?
yeah,
What's emotional?
yeah,
But you can't separate them. Feeling and thinking are like this, but we invented the words, so we think we can separate them.
yeah. Absolutely, I totally agree.
Yeah, so Bridget Bardot says, "I when I make love, I don't think." And I'm like, "Good luck. How can you turn your brain off?" You know? And then, there's a bumper sticker on a car on my street, and it says, "Don't believe everything you think." And I'm saying, "Well, you could say, 'Don't believe everything you feel.'"
Right, right. No difference, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah. Say, go on.
Go ahead.
No, I was I hate to refer to my dad always, but that's something that he doesn't. Oh, I don't know. I'm getting into one of these. I'm wallowing away. Don't ignore
No,
me.
no, but feel free.
Right,
That's that's what these are about, Michael.
right.
Wallowing, anecdotes, tangents. I'm open for all those because that's where the gems come up,
Of
so
course.
don't feel like that's good. So your dad's still living, is that the thing?
Yeah, yeah. He's 93, but he's an intellectual, and he's had a big influence in my life. But he's very old school, really, as to be expected given his age, and he's very word centric,
Yeah,
and he's the kind of person who would believe that you can't think without language. You,
yeah,
yeah. And so I've had this kind of debate with him in the past.
yeah.
He doesn't understand the art too, so it's a bit of a problem since I'm an artist.
Yeah. And what could it be, Michael, is that he was that way and that caused you to be the other way.
Yeah, oh, very, very much so. Very much so.
Yeah.
It's probably to some degree a reaction, a way in which I could be an individual within my family, is because
There
I'm the
you
only
go.
one who really pursued the arts.
Yeah. Here's two from Alan Turing, 1950s. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I think that is the and as much as we have this ability to think, I think it comes from something, even deeper within ourselves, really.
Yeah. Second Turing question is, can machines think?
No, or at least they can't yet. Not quite. can mimic some of the processes that we do, but they don't really think yet. Whether they will or not, I don't know.
Yeah. You touched on this one. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Absolutely happiness, because meaning is you know, I think I derive meaning from happiness, but it's the happiness that I pursue. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, meaningless is really elusive.
Well, that's funny because I got the question from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And
Yeah,
he says meaning tends to last and happiness doesn't last.
interesting. Well, um,
It
yeah,
doesn't mean he's right either,
no,
because
no,
no,
but
he's right. Go.
yeah, no, it's interesting. I wonder if I can challenge that idea.
But
Um,
again, afterwards, I'd love for you to ask your dad, your life, did you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning? And which one lasts longer?
yeah, good question. Good
And I
question.
bet you he's read or he knows Viktor Frankl's
Oh yeah,
Man's
I'm
Search
sure.
for Meaning. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
Very interesting. Uh, I think it detects consciousness. Because I think consciousness can actually exist. Our own consciousness can be part of a collective consciousness
Yeah.
that is outside of our own selves, and therefore we detect it. In that case,
Yeah. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
I don't know. In my case, probably light, because I'm pretty slow at thinking.
Audre Lorde, the poet, said, "You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools." Yvonne Rainer, her colleague, said, "You can if you expose the tools." What new tool do you suggest?
Ooh, that's so abstract. um,
Well, really, just to clarify, Michael,
yeah,
the question is basically, what tool do you gravitate towards? You can add the word new if you want, and
yeah.
you can apply it to dismantling the master's house if you want.
Ooh, what tool do I gravitate? Um, to dismantle the master's house. Well, it's interesting because I'm a little bit of an anomaly amongst my peers, because I don't always have a project of dismantling the master's house, but I think that one has to change it, and one has to, the tool one uses, like, has to update, but doesn't, you don't have to throw it out. You have to renovate, I guess. And I think it's probably, there's probably, the tool would be a kind of a consciousness of kind of the zeitgeist, really.
Yeah.
You have to be in the present, really, in order to renovate your master's house.
Dude, that is the ultimate. Be here now.
Yeah, yeah,
The best tool is to live in the present.
yeah.
Like, good luck. That is an amazing tool. Okay,
As I get older and my daughter surpasses me in the hipness,
she does what?
she surpasses me in hipness by far now. She just graduated from a fine arts degree too, and I don't, half the stuff that the kids are doing these days is beyond me.
Right. What new toy do you suggest?
New toy. Well, actually, I think really, I like rediscovering old toys. Really,
Yeah.
I mean, this is quite practical. I like old technology, and I mine it for things that were it previously, was undiscovered. For new potential. So,
Yeah.
as far as, like, practically answering this question, go look at the stuff that is now obsolete. It's got lots of potential for rediscovering.
Yeah. It's really well put, because that's exactly what McLuhan said is when the old medium's replaced by the new one,
Yeah.
the old one becomes an art form.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
when the horse and buggy got replaced by the car,
Yeah.
Then you go to New York City and you get a romantic stroll through Central Park on a horse and buggy.
Right, right. It's not kind of romantic, not romance, some sort of that I'm after, though. This kind of,
Yeah.
but rather just discovering new potential.
Yeah, new potential. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, McLuhan also learned from Pound the poet, artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions,
yeah.
so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So, Michael, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
As a culture, I don't know. I think people really don't think very much. They don't. They, that like, the reason I answer like that is because I would consider myself more aware of the psychic implication of, the tools we use today than a lot of
Yeah.
people seem to be. So and I think it's just, I don't know. There's a lot of reasons, but it seems to be very superficial ones.
Yeah. Do artists have moral obligation?
No, no.
Wow, I love you solid there. Michael, everybody answers. Everybody has a moral obligation, or they go, "Oh, to themselves." Now, why do you say that? Because I ask all these questions because I want to hear the people answer them the way I want them. And I try to be very, calm and cool and like I don't. But when someone says no, you go, "What do you mean artists don't have a moral obligation?" How would you suss it? I'm glad
Well,
you
that's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. Of course, as you say, they artists, just like anybody else, have certain moral, obligations, I guess, within living in a society. But as far as singling out artists and especially that work they do, no, they don't. In fact, the fact that if they can avoid, this horrible obsession with morality these days, they could probably, there'd be much more interesting work out there, I think.
Exactly. I'm glad you said that because it's just like it's so amazing how most of my questions are answered 80% a certain way. And
Yeah.
I'm always even if I disagree, I'm always dying to hear someone say the contrary to the norm. You know, I mean, that's what I think great art should fuck your shit up and
Yeah.
say, I could do that. you know. Like Jackson Pollock, like
Yeah, yeah.
anybody can splash paint on a canvas. I could do that.
Right. Right.
Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Um, well, I'm not really afraid of ideas at all. But
Yeah.
perhaps as I age, I become more bewildered by new ideas.
Yeah.
So as I get older, I'm more comfortable with old ideas, which is not necessarily a good thing. But yeah. But I'm not. Fear doesn't really enter into it. I'm quite curious,
Yeah.
but I don't always understand.
Yeah. There's a great line. I actually got it from two people. John Cage said, I can't understand why people are afraid of new ideas. I'm afraid of the old ones.
Well, that's good too. Yes.
and then,
Quote. Lovely.
then Charles Kettering said, people are very open-minded about new things as long as they're exactly like the old ones.
Yes. Yes.
Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
You want right now? When I was in art school, I did a series of drawings of my earliest childhood memories, and the result of that was they've gotten fixed in my consciousness. I can give you any number of my earliest
Well,
childhood memories.
describe one.
Okay, well, one of the earliest memories I have, I'm 63, and I think I was 3 when Kennedy was assassinated, and I don't remember the event itself, but I do remember that I was in the midst of a squabble with my sister about a toothbrush that was mine and she was claiming was hers. And we went running downstairs to my mother to get her to settle the dispute. And I was completely, the whole debate was completely removed by what my mother was doing, which was matting these beautiful frames. She's mad or pictures. The picture there, she had these big, large composites of the Beatrix Potter images that she was matting to go into our bedroom. And I completely forgot the argument that I was having with my sister. Yeah, it was about three or so. And I think these pictures were reinforced by the fact that they lived in my bedroom for several years. But this is the first time I'd seen them, and I was quite interested. And my mother remembers framing those things and listening on the radio to the news that Kennedy had been assassinated. So that's one of my earliest memories. Yeah,
that's heavy. And so, is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Oh, I think it's a blessing. I live in my memories a lot.
Yeah. Tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model, and what specifically was the impact?
Okay, that one person that has had an impact within my family that's had a, oh goodness. So can you rephrase that question again?
Yeah, it's sort of like someone in your family who had an impact on you, and what was the impact?
Okay. Well, I mean, everybody in my family has had impacts on me. But I've talked about my father. My mother had a huge impact on me also, in a very different way. She was, I learned from her the value in just working really hard at something, because amazing the results you can get, not immediately but over time if you just obsess on about something. Yeah. My mother was very, very good at that, and she always had many plates spinning at one time, but she was so efficient with how she managed her life that's had a huge impact on how I live my life.
That's good. Now, outside your immediate family.
Outside my immediate family. Well, there's been a number of people, but I think I'd have to go to mention the person you mentioned at the top of the interview, my good friend Doug Harvey, who I've known since the 7th grade. We were we're friends. He's my oldest friend, I'd say, but he's continually had a huge influence on my life. And interestingly, I think I may be able to say the same thing on his life too. I mean, the thing is, we haven't always lived in the same city, or in fact, we haven't lived in the same city. We haven't. There have been long periods of time when we haven't been in communication. But his interests, right from when we were in 7th grade and as they evolved, have had such an impact on my interests and vice versa that without describing. I could try to go into detail and describe what those influences were, but that he's a person that I would say, one person that has had a big impact on my life.
Yeah, very good. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Yes, my father is an Anglican priest, and so we were raised in the Anglican Church, which is like the Episcopal Church in the States. So that was definitely part of my upbringing. I have 3 siblings, and none of them continue on with that now, but I do actually. I think earlier on I was talking about how it's not. I don't necessarily, dismantle the master's house. That's an example in which I haven't. I've continued. I've experienced enough value in it to continue on with it. Mostly because I'm very interested in the church music, in the music itself. I've been singing in a church choir most of my life.
Yeah, beautiful. Do you pray?
Yes, yes.
If
I mean,
God, go ahead.
yeah. I mean, I also think prayer can come in many different forms. I think the music is a form of prayer.
Oh yeah.
I was also very much involved, not so much more recently, but in my youth, in the kind of the hippie movement, the rainbow gatherings. I don't know if you know
Yeah.
about that. And I
Oh yeah.
remember once somebody at one of the gatherings saying that there was one of these kind of, probably pretty cheesy, songs that people sang along to the drumming, but they talked about um, dancing as their form of prayer, dancing through the night to the drums, and I thought that was a really, a great form of prayer, yeah, yeah.
Beautiful. And if God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Well, being a Christian, I would say I forgive you.
Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Evil is just another word for, well, evil people exist. No, I don't think that, I think evil is a force in nature. It's just like good, and I don't think that there are people that are pure evil. Just like there's nobody that's purely good either. So no, I don't believe that there's evil people out there.
Yeah, it's amazing because what I love to hear, Michael, is when someone goes, "We're all capable of evil."
Yeah, we are.
Yeah,
And
but
actually, I would go further and say we all, not only capable, we all are evil at times.
at times, yeah,
Yeah.
that's being human. But see, the hidden question really is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurai. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini,
I like that one.
and Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. Again, the basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Um, well, I think that whether you empower them or not, the first step is acknowledging them. Really, if you don't acknowledge your enemy, then you're in denial. So for whatever way it unfolds, one has to actually start by acknowledging.
So after you acknowledge him, then what would you recommend? What's a way to deal with an enemy?
Um, well, depends on the sins, the transgressions of my enemy. But I would probably, I'd probably confront them and see how what kind of response one gets. And I mean, ultimately, one has to, distance oneself from an enemy if there isn't any way. If there one, because otherwise you could spend your life trying to resolve this difference.
Yeah. Well, this is Nassim Talib. Games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. Someone said villains don't think they're bad, they want control. Heroes want freedom. And Gregory Bates in The Anthropologist says if a criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, oh, I did something morally and socially wrong? So again, it's a lot of prompts, but the basic question is does punishment work?
Um, punishment. Well, sorry. I mean, I'm trying to put it in the context of everything you said, but in simply spoken, punishment may or may not work. It can work, certainly, I guess, if the idea is for it to you know, make the guilty person, you know, aware of their and to reform, you know. But I'm sorry, I'm probably, that's a very trite kind of response, and I'm trying to go back, trying to think of everything you said earlier on, which was much more interesting, really.
Right,
Than,
it is. You know, it's funny because I really fail on that because I overload with too
yeah,
many.
yeah, yeah. I was getting like my brain isn't very quick,
Right,
and
but
I
it
was
is
getting.
this it's this thing, you know, games were created to give non-heroes
Oh
the
yeah,
illusion of winning. In real life, you don't know who really wins or loses, but you can tell who a hero is and who is not. I mean, I just take it to the extreme. If Trump gets thrown in jail and cannot run for president, and he writes a book and says, "I'm sorry, I did wrong," would you forgive him?
I probably would. Although I'm not a Trump fan, and you know, obviously we would find find any such admission of guilt, you know, suspect. So I don't know. I'm that, but the thing is that I think that I do think that there that if people truly, I mean, if you know, we all have to make this decision for ourselves. But if we truly think that he has seen the error of his ways and has reformed, then we have to give him another chance. You know, the it's you know, I think that's, you know, if the question is about, you know, like convicted mass murderers who repent, you know, they, you know, should they be, you know, thrown, you know, well, you know, here we don't have the death penalties, but they get, you know, people say there should be no chance of ever them
Yeah.
getting released. But I don't agree with that. I think that there is, you know, that, you know, if you have to offer some sort of faint hope.
Well, it's like most people want to lean towards not punishing, but rehabilitating.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you said, hope. But it's funny because I think forgiveness is the key. It's like Mark Twain said, forgiveness is the smell the flower gives off when the foot steps on it. And when I give that Trump thing, I don't know. I just guess that 99% of the people I interview are not Trumpies. I don't even know. But
Right.
I asked that Trump question. I know it's a little, I'm getting
Yeah.
in trouble. And every almost 99% go, no, I wouldn't forgive him because I wouldn't believe him.
Well,
But I
that's
mean,
the point. It's a
but
hard, you know, but
yeah,
but you know, if you can't, well, you're saying that he's unredeemable, and
right. You're saying
maybe he is, you know,
right.
but you gotta have you. I still, you know, you know, maybe it's fantasy, but I still think that one has to have hope for everybody,
Yeah.
even the worst.
No, I gave a lecture once before all these liberals, and I says the only thing you do with Trump. This was many years ago, probably when he was president. Says the only thing you do with Trump is love him, and they're like, God, you know, it's like, you know, I mean, are humans hardwired for hating? I met a kid once who was raised a Buddhist, and you know, I met him like at 10, and then at 14, I says, well, what have you learned from being raised a Buddhist? He says, not to hate.
Right? Well, yes.
And I
Yeah.
was like, I mean, are we raised to hate? Is that something cultural or is it in us innately? Like I have a essay I'm writing right now, Can Art Stop War? And it's basically we're brainwashed. Most people think that we're hardwired to fight and be violent. And you know, the matristic movement, Maria Gambutta said, no, we're hardwired to be to cooperate,
Yeah.
not to fight.
Yeah. So, but where does the fighting come from?
probably some sort of need of survival. They're coming to steal my food, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. So we're hardwired.
Everybody-
I think in that case we are hardwired to fight also,
Yeah.
but also we're hardwired to make peace. I mean, I think we have both those things, competing things
Yeah.
within ourselves. Yeah.
But it's like if they're coming to steal your food, let them have it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
what? You got, oh my God, I can't steal my food. It's like,
yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of I'm looking out over as you speak. I saw a squirrel chasing another squirrel, and that was vicious. So that's happening just as we're talking. And
but again, Michael, what you're doing is anthropomorphizing.
of course,
You're putting this word vicious on they might be playing,
yeah,
and to us it looks vicious. It's
yes,
just like, when Muhammad Ali, one of my heroes, when he boxed, he loved the other guy, but
yeah,
we, oh no, he hated him, he badmouthed him, and it's like, what are you guys doing? You're like right there on top of each other, rubbing your bodies up to each other, and you're hating the other person,
yeah.
so it's, I'm getting paid for it. So, but this goes perfectly into this. This is James Joyce being the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? And then years later, Faulkner said sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, we can. I think that reenactments are very useful. I mean, that's what a play is, isn't it? A reenactment. I think that it's in the same way that it functions like memory. We can relive these experiences and contemplate them and get more out of them. And so a good play does that. I think it allows us to contemplate something that we experience all the time, but then we don't think about it in the same way as when we have when we've hived off time to really focus on that, and especially if it's presented really well, like some really good theater or movies.
Yeah. So, Michael, walk us through what's the tipping point where you said, I want to be an artist. That's my calling. I mean, you talked about your mom matting these paint. Did your parents take you to art museums and galleries? Did sort of walk us through your grade school, high school, and college? Where were you? Is there a point where you go, that's my calling?
Yeah, I think from a very young age, I this is all I wanted to do. I mean, from a very young age, from a grade school age, I thought that I didn't like any other subject in school except art, and I could happily do it all the time, there was a period in junior high anyway that where, or maybe even younger, where people, I mean, this is superficial, but people recognize my drawing skills, and so it was reinforced by my peers that, oh yes, you're an artist. I also, in my family, I was the most um, dedicated to it. I could, and I think it had something to do with a certain patience that I had. I could just spend hours doing this stuff and and enjoy it, and so it was probably enforced by by the family mythology. Oh, Michael's an artist, but it wasn't something that I ever questioned. I remember in the 8th grade, we took these aptitude tests to find out what kind of careers we might be interested in pursuing, and I was in the bottom 5 percentiles for spelling. I was hopeless, and arithmetic was just a little bit better, but it's actually in the top 5 percentiles for abstract reasoning and for mechanical reasoning. And the guidance counselor says, "Oh, with these scores, you'd make a great engineer," And I said, "Does this test measure my potential to be an artist?" Says, "Oh, no, we can't possibly measure that." And I said, "Well, then it's useless to me."
That's funny. We can't measure if you're going to be an artist.
Yeah. So the guidance counselor couldn't answer that one, you know. And he could have said, "Well, you're not going to make any money," but which would have been honest. But instead, he said, "Well, no, this is it's a limitation of this of the test." And I said, "Well, then it's not very of use to me." But ironically, my art has increasingly become mechanical, electromechanical, and so my engineering proclivities are slowly seeping into my art anyway.
Right. But let's say, a screenwriting teacher told me, great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process when you're making a piece of Michael art?
Yeah.
No, not a commission, just you're making piece of art. What role does intention play?
Not very much. I've already mentioned this, of course. I don't really know what I'm doing until it's done.
Yeah.
I have, I mean, I do have a kind of a fairly spontaneous beginning to most of my work. You know, it's improvisational, and it works from a point of improvisation into something that is intentional, but only through the process of creating. So I actually, it's terrible for trying to apply for grants and things because I have no idea what I'm going to do. I just want the money. You know?
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I have a very, very little preconceived idea of what I'm doing, other than, you know, I'm interested in exploring these materials to see what they'll offer.
Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your potential viewer when you're making your art?
Um, um, I think I do think of my audience quite a bit. You know, I mean, it's mostly you know, evolved out of the kinds of venues that I present my work in, and I agree with Duchamp's, you know, statement, and I do think that art is only completed, you know, when there's an audience. That it's the actual communication between the artist and the audience, but yet that doesn't really doesn't seem to be, to me, to be in conflict with my last statement, because I'm still, you know, my maybe that's what's driving it. Ultimately, I start improvisational, but I'm also thinking of what I want to say to somebody, you know, over time, and that's how it coalesces.
Yeah. So McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness, like a knife and fork extends our teeth, shutter and a camera extends our eyelid, maybe even non-tangible like religion or philosophy extends consciousness.
Yeah.
What does the drawing utensil or the brush, that utensil that you did use, you know, now you're in sound
Yeah.
installations, but when you started drawing, what does that utensil extend? What humanness?
Oh, it extends the imagination, obviously. You
Yeah.
know, it's articulating things that are swirling around in there somewhere, you know, and getting it out. So, I mean, that goes without saying. I don't know whether, um, I think that I'm touching on something I said earlier on. Also, you know, the my interest in kind of trailing edge technology is extends the purpose of this technology beyond what it has existed up until this point.
Yeah, the purpose of the technology, meaning, you could say, well, what does the pencil extend is your finger.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, yes. Yeah.
in McLuhan's line about movies is funny, because when I ask people, well, what does a movie extend? What humanness? And they'll go memory or your eye. And Marshall said, no, movies extend your foot because you're traveling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is an endless thing, because you started with what's your favorite form of information is sense, what
Yeah.
comes in through your senses.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, so let's go deep dive into art a little. These are just various people talking about art, and I'm just curious your reaction. This is Mike Kelly. Art is making your problems other people's problems.
I love it. So, are you wanting a response, or
Yeah, any thoughts that
yeah,
it
yeah. Yeah.
Or you go off on tangents, stories, anecdotes, anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that quote. That's lovely. Haven't heard it before. I my problems. Yes, yeah, in a way, and as much as I'm bringing my world to my audience, yes, my problems, my obsessions, my my uh, um, yeah, it's making like if the audience actually pays attention, they're going to be caught up in my own angst.
Yeah. Well, here's Fanny Howe, the poet. The point of art is to show people that life is worth living by showing that it isn't.
That's another lovely one.
That one I get the Mike Kelly one, but this
Yeah.
one I don't really get. But okay.
Oh, it's a very dark kind of view. I mean, there's a whole lineage of that's one that would probably appeal to my friend Doug Harvey. Actually, it's a little bit. It sounds kind of um, oh I but yeah, I mean, maybe artists actually, in some role, some aspect of their role is to actually point out the futileness of life, of everything we do.
Yeah, in 40 years of interviewing, when I interviewed my Doug with all these questions,
Yeah, yeah.
the first question I says, "What's the best thing for a human being?" And he named the gas that Hitler used. I was like, I don't know what the name of the
You
gas
want a shocker?
and I was like, "What is that?" And he goes, "That's the fucking Hitler killed Jews gas." I'm
Yeah,
like, "What?" I mean, it will never go out of my brain. I've had 1,000 answers.
that's a bit of tongue in cheek too of him, but
Well,
I'm
I
not
know it's
surprised
tongue
he
in
came.
cheek, but again, how much tongue in cheek? Like I have this saying, "There's no such thing as kidding." People
No,
go,
there,
"Oh, I
no.
was just kidding." But I mean, again, I'm not holding it against them. I'm just saying it of all the answers I've had, it's one that sticks in my brain.
Well, he has both a really dark sense of humor, and also he's got a just a complete sieve, sieve of information, so he can conjure
Oh
that
yeah,
out of God knows where, just
yeah,
and it could be about anything. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
This is two of my film heroes, George Manupelli. His mantra was ignore yourself. Jonas Mika says there is no self-expression. And Cecil Taylor, the jazz pianist, says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me.
yeah.
So is art making more self-expression or more your vehicle for whatever technologies, cultures, and environments are dominant?
Yeah, well, it's a vehicle. I think it's not. It is certainly. I would be much more weighted in the on the side of that I'm not even sure what I'm doing myself. I'm just channeling these ideas, but I don't it's where they're coming from. Isn't just the technology, like when what you said at the very end didn't seem to quite resonate. The where I don't know where it's coming from, but it was a little bit like I think it's William Burroughs that talked about improvising. With when more than one person improvises, there's this kind of third mind that enters into the mix and has a role. And you're just you know I like that idea, and I think it happens where it's something's happening that nobody is in charge of. That is
Yeah.
happening, coming from goodness knows where.
Well, that's to explain that, because when I say you're a vehicle for whatever technologies, environments, or cultures are dominant, well,
Yeah,
I give the example of drumming.
yeah,
Ginger Baker, the drummer for Cream, they go, "Where'd you get your sound from?" He goes, "I was in London when they were bombing. Boom, 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 boom. And
wow,
then James Brown's drummers in Ohio, he says, "You're the architect of funk drumming. Where'd you get it from?" He goes, "I lived in a house and one side was a factory and the other side was a train track." So it's like, tss, boom, tss, boom, tss,
yeah,
so he just absorbed
yeah,
his
yeah.
environment.
It's interesting. I don't know whether I could articulate the influences. But yeah, I'm sure they're there.
Yeah.
Certainly. Yeah, yeah.
Can art making be egoless?
Probably not. Probably not. I don't think that. I think you can't avoid a certain saying that it comes from somewhere else. It's not oneself. One still takes a certain kind of pride of ownership, even though it's probably not warranted. But ego is not always something that is justified.
Yeah. And Michael, you touched on improv, and I'm curious because this is Milan Kundera, the guy who wrote Unbearable Likeness of Being.
Yeah.
And he says, this is why I love writing, because the character that I'm writing about can go further than I can. That kind of sounds woo-woo, but I understand it because you're like saying, well, I channel, but I don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
But I mean, it just anything on that. This is why I love writing, because the character that I'm writing about can go further than I can.
Yeah. You hear this a lot from writers, that, I mean, in different form. They often say they create the characters and then the characters create the novel, really. They don't really know what's happening there. There's some sort of consistency, of character, but then and I can well understand how a writer might say, wow, that character is doing something I'd never do myself, but it's plausible, and so in that sense, yeah, it's going beyond what what the authors themselves would do, and by creating the not only the character but the context, then they can really examine that context, in the abstract, and discover all kinds of things that they hadn't considered without the context.
Yeah, because that's Steve Martin quotes David Mamet. Art is a product of the unconscious mind. It's like, yeah, but you're still conscious. It sounds good. But this is the poet critic Helen Vendler. She just died. She says, I write to explain things to myself.
Yeah, that kind of yeah, I think that, again, especially writers. I don't know whether that what I do is the same. Is quite that didactic, really. But I do understand that. I understand. And there's some element of that with my work. With what I do, and certainly I hear that kind of sentiment expressed a lot by writers.
Yeah, because see, I'm curious because most of these are writing, but I'm glad you turned it over or carried it over, because that's what I'm asking you. Because Bertolt Brecht asked Charles Lawton, "Why do you act?" He says, "Because people don't know what they are like, and I think I can show them." Now
Yeah,
that's like it really goes to Igor Stravinsky. He says most people don't like what they know what they like. Or no,
what?
I said it backwards. Sorry. Igor said most people don't know what they like what they know. Yeah. It's like
Yeah,
if all you give people is a certain type of art,
yeah,
then that's what they're going to say. So my
yeah,
question is really, how does one acquire taste? Because my friend calls music the three T's: technique, theory, and taste. Technique, you learned how to draw.
yeah,
Theory, you learned the history of art and you
yeah,
felt it. Then
yeah,
how did you gravitate towards this kind of art and not that kind of art? How does
yeah.
one acquire taste?
That's good question. I think there has to be some kind of um, conscious, a deliberate attempt to expose oneself to stuff that they don't like, and to give it time, to try to figure out why it is that other people like stuff that you don't like, also as far as what I do, I've come to what I do by a long and kind of kind of slow incremental trajectory. It's confusing to people who haven't followed that trajectory. So it's important for the artist to try to give a context for how I arrived at what I'm doing now too. But so I hate going into galleries and reading didactic panels, but sometimes it's necessary for people to understand. What I mean. I've completely had revelations about artists only after reading about it first, because it left me cold until I read it, and then I realized, oh, that's what's happening, and it's very cool, So
No,
there has to
yeah,
be a degree of education.
it's funny because I agree, because going to the Ann Arbor Film Festival for 30 years, it's 63 years old. It's basically art films,
Yeah, yeah,
and I hate that for 40 years they didn't put any blurb next to the title. You just
right.
had the title and the maker. Now there's a blurb. Like, don't tell me what I'm going to see. But we didn't for 40 years have Q&A.
Yeah,
And now we have Q&A after the films.
very
And
good.
sometimes I'm like, wow. And
Yeah,
some of the old people don't have Q&A. Like Stan Brakhage would say, let the film speak for itself, and then he would talk about it for 2 hours. This is another poet, Andre Melrose said, art is to transfer destiny into awareness. In this idea that, Hollis Frampton talking about experimental film, he says narrative is born among the animal necessities of the spirit because we're waiting to die. Can you forget to die?
and the first statement sounded pretty highfalutin.
To
Yeah,
transfer
yeah,
destiny
yeah, yeah,
into awareness, because
yeah,
I think it's kind of connected with Hollis saying, you know,
yeah.
is destiny dying? Is that what
Yeah,
he's,
yeah. But actually, it's really good to connect the two, because then it gives you a kind of a more down to earth kind of definition of destiny. Yeah, I get, perhaps, I don't know. Um, I, I don't think the fact that we all die is, I don't know. I mean, death is probably has some component of what I do, but it isn't something that I obsess about, I guess, too
yeah.
much. So
Well, Michael,
that doesn't really answer that, I know,
no,
but
it does. You said perhaps. The
yeah,
thing is, Michael, most people, since I started asking that in the last couple of years, they
yeah,
go, "What do you mean? Can I forget to die?" They just freak out over the question because they don't know to take it literally or metaphorically.
yeah,
That's what you got to do. This. Ask your dad. Can
yeah.
you forget to die? At this point in his life, he's probably very linear and left brain.
I think on some level he can't wait to die. Really,
But that's what I'm saying. Did he live that long because
yeah,
he forgot to die? He's like, hey, I'm too busy living. I love it when people go, can you forget to die? And they go, yes. Most people go, no, you can't, because we think we know we're gonna die, but no one knows what happens after you die. So it's literally and metaphorically, it's a wide open. I
yeah,
mean, does your
yeah.
religion tell you something continues on?
Well, I mean, it gives us hope. It doesn't give us a definitive answer,
Yeah.
It gives us hope that there's more to life than what we experience here.
Yeah.
But, but nobody knows. Nobody's come back and told us,
Yeah. Well, here's the question I really want to ask you too, because it connects. It's about the word archive. Okay, so
archive.
archiving
Okay.
is 1400s etymologically to keep safe, free from harm.
Yeah.
200 years later, it's what we know it as, a record preserved as evidence. But Baudelaire, the poet, said if you try to make a statement long, deep, and rich, it will age very fast. If you try to only own the day you're talking, it will last forever. So that's back to your philosophy that I was raised on, be here now.
Yeah.
Isn't the point of life to live in the moment? Then
Yes.
why do we have to collect all this shit and think it's valuable? So Wyndham Lewis, well, Wyndham Lewis nailed it. He said, artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. And
Yeah.
that's an amazing statement.
Yeah.
But we know the Egyptians put stuff in their coffin.
Yeah.
Why is this need or want to archive more innate or more invented?
Oh. Um, I it's so pervasive throughout history, but I at the same time uninclined to think that it's innate. That I think that yeah, we collectively have invented this need to preserve, you know, things from, relics from past lives, if that's what archiving is, it does kind of lend itself to, I mean, in a way, preserving, I kind of it helps to make a cohesive society if there certain things have been deemed worthy of saving, and so that everybody's dwelling on the same artifacts, after the fact. But I don't really think I don't think it's very important at all. I don't have any like desire for anything that I make to last, longer than my own lifetime.
Well, that was the question. Well, first I was going to say the
Yeah,
futurists that destroy all museums and libraries. I go to the library every day, but I love that they were able to say that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Everybody our age, I say this: do you have plans for your own archives? And they go
Yeah.
like this: I should. It's like, if you die, then you expect your loved ones to take care of your stuff. And they're like, just throw it in a dumpster. What are you going to do? But you're like, well, no, I think a couple things should be saved. So you have no plans, no archive for
Well,
your.
well, as much as I've thought about it, okay, I have to be honest. I mean, I have thought about it a bit, and my idea is that it would be really nice to have a kind of a postmortem, retrospective somewhere, have a show, and then after that, anybody who wants anything can have it. Otherwise, dump it.
Yeah. But you don't have galleries or museums that own your pieces?
No, 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 no.
Wow.
I'm very much under the radar.
Yeah. So, what do you think the motive of the cave artist was?
Probably not my own. What artists today were motivated by. I think that probably the idea of art itself has changed over time, but who knows? Maybe they had a kind of a compulsion to make things too. I'm sure they did. So who knows? Who knows? I mean, really, we don't really know. But I'm very suspect of the claims that, oh yeah, like the art historians that say, oh, this is what they were doing, because I don't think we can. It's with a few kind of remains of from a certain period, we can't really extrapolate too much.
Yeah. Yeah, they go, "Oh, I draw a picture of the deer, then I can evoke the deer to come in my yard and I can kill it." And then they go, "No, it's an instruction manual. This is
Yeah,
a deer, go kill it tomorrow." But,
yeah,
McLuhan's favorite line was, "The Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can."
yeah, 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 exactly. I mean, I think that that the word art is, and what I've inherited as an artist is probably a kind of a is a construct. It's a way to explain these impulses to some degree, I think. But yeah, I like that idea that they don't the Balinese don't even have a word for art. Yeah, 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 yeah. And as I say, I I I don't really think that I mean, even much more recently, the medieval artists that wouldn't didn't put a name to what they were doing. The early, there was no, it was a different, it performed a different function in their society than it
Yeah.
does now. Writing too. I don't know how related this is, but I remember hearing about some 10th century, 11th century monk who was considered quite abnormal because he could read texts without making any sound. Because up until that time, texts were to be read out loud, and he would actually read these texts silently, which is now, how most of us read, But I think, well, if texts are read out loud, then they performed a completely different function than not to mention that the content has changed. So these, if you look at the written, example, it's evolved hugely. Why hasn't art evolved also in the same way?
Oh, dude, if you ever find the source of where you read that, let me know, because that's huge in studying Finnegan's Wake, because that's the thing.
Yeah.
Finnegan's Wake, you have to read it out loud
Right.
with a group of people.
Yeah.
And people go, well, that's not what you do with books. Are you in a book club? Yeah, you don't do that. But you know what you reminded me of just before that was Bruce Conner. He had this series of paintings in his gallery. He says, well, you got to sign him. He goes, I don't want to sign him. Just fake my signature. He says, I can't fake your signature. He says, just put it on the back, just write it on the back. No, we can't do that. He says, just take a rubber stamp and put it in. No, they bugged the shit out of him that he had to sign it in order for them. And he said, just sign Dennis Hopper's name. and then eventually when Connor gets these big museum shows, it's the Dennis Hopper room, and it made Dennis Hopper feel really good, like, wow, he signed my name, because he thought, use his name, don't blame me for this stuff. Okay, goes right along. Michael, what's more important, conviction or compromise?
Conviction or compromise? Probably compromise. I would say compromise. Because I don't really know. I don't have too many things that I'm really I have strong convictions about, and I do think that in order to function in society, we have to compromise all the time.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong answers, but that one you got right. T.S. Eliot said poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Not well. It's again going back to a very early question. I think that my inner dialogue is really in sounds and in images more than and smells. Smells. I like cooking too, and my inner dialogue. I can actually imagine food.
It's good. To have an inner dialogue and smell. I never got that. That is brilliant. So, is perception reality?
Yeah, it's part of reality, certainly.
Yeah. Lewis Carroll says, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Oh, I wish I could say yes. I love that quote too. I've heard it, but I don't know whether I dwell on those kinds of things. But I do like the idea,
Yeah.
And I mean, again, impossible things are so abstract, abstract to me, that it kind of really, it's more likely to, I don't know, it manifest in my art, really, than in my daily routine.
Yes. Sun Ra was quoted in the New Yorker of all places. The impossible attracts me because everything possible has been done and the world didn't change.
Right. I love that quote too. I've heard that. Yeah, that's great.
So, Michael, tell me one major element of your artistry, your art, your creativeness that's changed, and one major element that's stayed the same in the many years you've been doing this.
Okay, that's fairly simple. My collective audio improvisation has remained unchanged, really, almost from when it started happening about 35 years ago. Really, it's changed so little as to that it's a kind of a ritual, it's like religious almost, in how regular it is, and how, I mean, of course the content changes, but really the approach, it hasn't changed at all. Whereas my solitary visual art has gone through all kinds of changes, you know, starting from, you know, I mean, I painting and drawing and collages, and then my collages got larger and larger until they were wall sized, and then they started acquiring all kinds of three-dimensional components, and then I started making installations that were rooms that you walk into, which were like an extension of my these two-dimensional works. And then I started introducing sound and lights to these installations, and then all the lot of the kind of the visual content kind of pared away, and then I started getting interested in electronics, you know, like learning about electronics and salvaging. I mean, in a way, it's still collage. I collage, you know, trailing edge technology and repurpose it in these kind of large gallery installations. And so in a way, the trajectory has been step by step. It's not on what I'm doing right now. It is not unlike the drawings and collages I was doing back in the mid '80s when I finished left art school. But it's really the result has changed drastically from those days.
Wow, very articulate. I appreciate it. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Ooh. I completely agree with that statement, but I'm trying to think of an example. I think it's also related to what we were saying a little earlier on about how do we acquire taste. You know, it's by actually deliberately focusing on things we don't like, you know, that make us uncomfortable, and dwelling with it and trying to unpack that, and it's surprising how over time one can overcome this, you know, not only overcome the dislike, but actually become passionately, you know, in love with something that one, you know, that initially, you know, was repulsed by. So I don't know whether that's whether it's really answering your question, but that's what comes to my mind right away.
No, it's really deep, because it's one of my favorite McLuhan lines is carefully make plans, then do the opposite.
Yeah.
And it's a key word that we use, unlearn. You've got to unlearn everything you know. And people are like, no, you know,
it reminds me. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
It reminds me way back when Doug and I were just finishing our undergraduate art school, and Doug was teaching a course at a community center just to kids, I think. And one of the first assignments he got all the kids to do, and I think it was like with colored pencils or something. He says, okay, get your box of colors, select all the colors that you don't like, and take them out. And then he says, okay, remove the box. We're going to just work with the colors you don't like, you know?
That's why I collect kids' drawings, and they're like, the best ones are where they smear every color so it turns this ugly brown.
Yeah.
It's also, Fireside Theater would say, everything you know is wrong. But this is the best one, Schopenhauer. But you practically said it. All truth passes through three stages. First, it's ridiculed. Secondly, it's violently opposed. Third, it's accepted as being self-evident. I knew that all along. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Fill in the blank. Anger can be a productive emotion when
I don't know, it's a catalyst. I can only come up with a trite answer to that. I mean, because, you know, I don't experience anger very much. So it's not something that really plays too much of a role in my certainly in my day-to-day life. Occasionally I get angry, and then I'm usually very guilty about it, you know. You know, and so maybe that guilt has some positive, you know, outcome, but mostly I don't get angry. I'm a very even-tempered kind of person.
Very good. There's a line that goes, you create what you resist. Bob Goldthwait morphed it into, you are what you hate. James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your brain is super saturated with the religion you say you disbelieve. And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, thank God I'm an atheist. Any thoughts on the line? I'm not saying, Michael, you create what you resist. One creates what one resists. Any
Yeah.
thoughts on that line?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What do I first of all have to figure out what I resist. But again, all of those statements resonate with me. They make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
In my life, in my uh, I I, I try not to resist. I guess yeah, no, I don't dwell. I put it this way: I probably resist all kinds of things, but I'm not. I don't think about it very much,
Right.
and I can't. So I can't easily come up with an answer for that one. Sorry.
No worries. What's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
Um, there are differences, although my wife would beg to differ. But what are they? They're oh, in danger of becoming kind of sexist here. But I think, well, I mean, they're treated different in society, so perhaps it's because of the way we've been treated. But they, like whether it's innate or cultural. But I do think that women are more um, in the here and now, more present in the here and now, and men tend to be more, airy fairy, in a way, more, thinking about abstract ideas. But
Yep.
again, who knows whether that's an innate thing or whether it's a cultural thing.
Yeah. Here's 5 questions from Alan Watts, just off the top of your head in a couple words. 1, who started it all?
You started it all? God.
2, are we going to make it?
um, it's that question is still okay. I got to say yes.
Good. 3, where do we put it?
Where do we put it? um, that one's too abstract for me. Where do we put it? um, um, I don't know. We put it. We don't dwell on it too much. So we put it, on the back burner.
Very good. 4, who's cleaning it up?
Um, Not enough people. That's
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's probably a responsibility of us all. But I'm kind of switching in my consciousness now. Of course.
5, is it serious?
Yes.
How do you find peace of mind?
Usually, weirdly, through work.
Yeah.
Through being active and producing whatever it is. A good meal. Working in the garden. Working in the studio.
Yeah. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Keep dreaming. You're
Nice.
doing okay.
Beautiful.
Whoa. Sorry, I got it. I'll deny this right now. I got some weird phone call.
I like that. I'll deny this. I'll deny every answer I have.
No,
Like when my mom, I asked my mom once, "Can I interview you?" She goes, "Yeah, but everything I say today, I might say differently tomorrow." I said, "That's okay. I'm
yeah.
not holding to this." Just
Right. No, I wasn't actually denying you. I was
yeah.
not accepting the phone call. I
Oh,
was.
that's what I mean. I said, "You're not." I love it. Like, we just got a few more and we're out of here. Michael, it's really been fun and
Yeah, it's
entertaining
been fun.
and enlightening. I appreciate it.
Good.
Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
That depends on the architecture of the bathroom. It really does, because we have two bathrooms here. One of them, it makes entire sense to come down by the wall. Then the other one, you have to kind of reach over to the other side of the toilet, and it makes so much sense for it to come out. So that's the way I think it. There, it's not. You can't just say that there's one correct way, and
I love it because the patent is 100 years old and it has it going over.
yeah,
85 to 90, almost 95% people say over. But
yeah.
the people who say under have their reasons. But no one in 40 years has ever said both.
Well, that they put the print on only one side so that they
Yeah.
force you to have it going over and forcing itself into your presence, right? As opposed to, they don't want any product kind of being discreetly pushed away.
Yeah.
They want it to come into your presence, but
In your face. They want that.
they want it in your face. Yeah.
Out of sight, out of mind. Or as we say, create the disease and offer the cure.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
um, Oh, that I'm so bad at coming up with titles for any of my shows or anything like that. What would be the title of my autobiography?
Yeah.
So that would be something that I've written.
Yeah.
Goodness. Oh no, you put me on the spot because this is one of my real problems, is not being able to name anything,
Don't worry.
Yeah,
Look,
yeah.
put in the comments later, or we could just leave people
Sure,
thinking. But I
sure.
bet you can answer the follow-up. They want to scent the glue and the binding of your book. What smell?
Well, I don't limited to one smell. I mean, it'd be great um, if it changed, evolved as you go through the book,
That's
and it
great.
could,
I've never had that answer either. Well,
yeah,
a couple of the smells, the
yeah.
evolution.
Well, I mean, I think that there's all kinds of smells in my history. Everything from the kind of the ecclesiastical frankincense and the smells of kind of Turkish cuisine. The kinds and Middle Eastern food. Some of the smells that I experienced in the garden. I guess it would again if it could follow. If it's, I think that I could imagine every chapter would have its own smell,
Good. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed, and what would it be made of?
I told you what I thought about archives and anything. If it was a statue was made in my honor, I can. The first question is a conundrum. Where would it go? I don't really belong to any place. So it's very hard to name a place. What would it be made of? It could be made out of. I think I'd like it to be a composite of salvaged materials. And preferably with the sound component.
Nice.
Yeah. But I don't know where that would go. And maybe here in my yard where I live.
There you go. Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Something good. Oh, I think I would. Oh, never want. That's the problem. I mean, I can get almost to the end of that question, but
yeah, it's good you never had it, but you never
want it. Never wanted either. But it's still good. Oh goodness. I think there's certain places in the world that are very good, but I probably don't want to travel there. I think that's the closest thing I can think of. But actually, I think that's not being honest, because I don't think there's anywhere in the world I don't want to travel to. But the likelihood of traveling some places is slim. So I don't. Yeah. It's a hard one. If it's something good, I want it. It's hard to get beyond that and say it's good, but I don't want it.
Right. I'll tell you what Mike Kelly said.
What did he say?
Children.
Children. Well, I have children.
They're good.
Yeah.
You never had it and you never wanted
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. And a lot of people feel that way. Both my
Yeah.
sisters, for instance.
Yeah.
But no, children are great. They do change your life entirely. But
Yeah.
I'm glad I had two kids.
Yeah. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
I'd probably try to get out of the vat pretty quickly.
What's what is the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Cultural shift. Well, this is not very PC either, but when I talk to my daughter who's just graduated from art school and all her peers, they're beginning to get very, very tired of the PC, the obsession with political correctness in their peers, and I'm kind of pleased that we might be moving away from that world. You know,
You mean cancel culture?
yeah, cancel culture. There's all kinds of ways, but
Yeah.
yes, cancel culture
Yeah.
especially. Yeah,
Yeah.
but also, like, I think it's really actually there the last decade or more even there's been such restrictions on art making because of what
Yeah.
you can and can't say,
Yeah.
that I sense that we're coming to, out of that from the other
Oh,
end.
good.
Yeah, and I'm very pleased to see that. I
Well,
have hope for my daughter and her generation, actually.
yeah. I mean, that's what Mike Kelly said. He says, art is the last bastion that you can get away with any. I mean, when Warhol and McLuhan both said art is art is getting away with anything.
Yeah.
And when I said that to someone, they go, that sounds like Trump. I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah, maybe Trump's an artist.
Okay, couple more and we're out of here. What question remains unresolved for you?
Question unresolved. Well, it's the thing is that I think that there's very few questions that are resolved, so it's very hard to, say
That's
which.
good.
you
Few
know,
questions are resolved. Man,
yeah,
you really have a sense of putting what my mind kind of wants to say
yeah.
into actual words. So I
Oh, I'm
appreciate
glad.
it. And so how has art making shaped your behavior?
Well, since I've done it my entire life, really, okay, practically, it's made me very, very, very poor. Except for I'm not poor because I married an academic. But it makes me. That's probably a kind of a pat answer, but no, I have to always explain myself, and to people who when they ask me what do I do,
Yeah,
but no, that's not. Those aren't good answers. How's it shaped? I think it's enforced. What I've been saying all along, and it's my passion for dwelling and delighting in my senses. Really,
yeah. Dwelling and delighting in senses, man, that is beautiful because when people ask me, what do? I go, I do nothing effectively.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I said it at an art lecture once, and
Yeah.
there were 100 art students there, and they all laughed. And one woman, well, she was the one who asked me. She goes, "How do you make your living?" She asked me from the front row,
Yeah.
and I said, "Well, I do nothing effectively." And she knew I was bullshitting with her, and her evil eye just imprinted in my brain forever. Because
Right.
she was like saying, "Dude, I want to know how you make your money to pay your rent and eat
Yeah.
your food," you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's fine because dwelling and delighting in the senses is what humans should do. And
Yes.
you found some situation.
I'm very
Okay.
lucky. I'm very lucky that my wife has supports me in this
Yeah.
passion. Really,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thornton Wilder said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. Michael, you've laid your cards on the table for 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
Well, okay, I'm going to kind of answer this a little bit separately, or something that I've said before. I've often thought that for visual artists, at any rate, they're like performers, but that the art itself is the actor, and so they're working behind. They want to perform, but they don't want to be in front of an audience. So they make the art so it can perform for them.
Yeah.
And by doing so, they can both be present and be hidden, from view. And I think that probably is because artists, like most people, are kind of a mixture of extroverted and introverted, And so the extroverted part of them is their art, and the introverted part of them is the fact that they make art and then step away.
You really nailed what. There's a McLuhan-esque reinterpretation of the Wizard of Oz as the Wizard of Us. And what is the Dorothy's supposed to get is the broom and take it to the wizard.
Right.
And she gets the broom, which symbolizes advertising, skywriting, create the disease, offer the cure. She takes the broom to the wizard, and what does the Toto dog do but pull the curtain back and reveal? So
Right.
that's what artists are. They're Toto. We're Totos. Toto. We're just pulling the curtain back and say, see, So I love that. We're standing behind the painting. I actually saw an artist on Venice Boardwalk once, and he put his painting, and then his eyes would be just above his painting. So he kind of like hid behind his painting, and that's what you're doing. That's really amazing what you said.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. What gives you the most optimism?
I'm a very optimistic person. I don't know where it comes from, to tell the truth, but I I did hesitate when you asked, the one question that implied, is there a future? But I had to say yes. Where does it come from? I just think, again, I think it's just I'm lucky that I have this disposition that makes me optimistic, because I know a lot of people that are not, And it's
But
just,
do you think you got it more on your own or more the way your parents raised you?
yes, yeah. It's in as much as it's a cultural thing. No, I don't even think it's. I think optimism is something that is more innate. I really do. I don't. My two. All my siblings have would answer this differently. So it's certainly not the upbringing that I had particularly. I've been very lucky, and that's maybe contributed to optimism. But I've always been optimistic, even when when I was throwing everything to chance. I assumed that things would work out well, and they usually did.
Yeah.
So I think it's more disposition. Really, it's an innate. It's a very fortunate quality that I have. I think it's better to be optimistic than pessimistic.
Definitely. The first question is, what's the best thing for a human being? And Wilhelm Reich said the best thing for a human being is another human being.
Yeah.
And the last question is, what gives you the most optimism? That's what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he said, other people. So it's sure been fun spending this time with another person, especially because it was you, Michael. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever
Absolutely.
and ever.
Good.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Jerry. Goodbye.
Bye.